very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, I was like, oh, something's off.
And I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something,
Keep that crowd warmed up. There's Mr. Jehovah Tiger.
What's going on, guys, and welcome to another edition of the Warcry Podcast. I'm your host, Yehola Tiger, and on this edition, we are going to be talking about some spooky stuff, because it is spooky season. And that's one thing about me. As you guys know, I love Halloween. And I love Halloween so much, and I appreciate everyone that supports the podcast. I have 4 shows this week. The show tonight, I got Mr. Ryan Knights. He's out of Maine, and he also has a YouTube channel called Mysterious Nocturnum. If I'm pronouncing that correct, Ryan will correct me. On Tuesday night, we got a good one. You guys know we got some horror movies. We're going to be talking in depth about a lot of horror movies with Kevin Nez from the Mac Nez podcast and the E Society podcast. He's going to be on Tuesday night. If you guys go hit the tab that says live, it'll tell you what time. I believe it's 8 o'clock. I cannot remember, but I will definitely put that out tomorrow. On Friday, on October 18th, Friday night, I have Patrick Meekin coming back. If you guys remember Patrick Meekin, he is the author of Nightmare in Holmes County. He told us a pretty crazy and, very creepy story about his dealings with the Amish. Patrick Meekin will be on Friday night, okay, October 18th. And then to round out this week, the 4th show will be with Cryptids of the Corn with Mr. E. Man, that show, I don't know what time yet, but we'll get it going. But that's going to be, I believe, at 8 o'clock. Maybe. Well, I'll have to confirm. So I got 4 shows for y'all this week. And I told you, I love Halloween. I love getting it cooking. And 4 shows, and then obviously we're going to be having shows next week. And then Halloween night, I'm reaching out to some people, trying to get everybody situated. I'll be reaching out to everybody this week, trying to see who can do Halloween. We're going to be telling stories, the whole shebang. And that's going to be on Halloween night. So like I said, we got a lot of content. I give y'all about 20 hours of content for the month. And then on November 13th, we have the 2-year anniversary of the podcast. Can't wait for that. I'm going to try to line me up a couple guests, and we're going to go all out. And then after the 13th, I may disappear for a while, y'all. No promises. I may or may not have a show after November 13th. I don't know. I ain't retiring, but giving y'all about 20 hours of content, man, kind of, be kind of gassed out a little bit, and then New Year's Day, I'm planning to do another edition of This Is Creepy. So like I said, we got a lot of things cooking. There's some things bubbling. We'll get them to a full boil. We'll get it right. Be like Jared Davis out in Cherokee Nation country. Get that pork just right. Get the salt on it. Get it to a rolling boil. Get that oil going. And throw that meat in there. So we'll get it right. But tonight, I'm very excited. This is a guy that I've known for a while now. It's crazy. I think look back. I think I've known him since during COVID. I think I've known him since COVID. So about 4 years. He goes back. He's a man of many names. I'll say this. He went by Chaos. but I'm gonna call him Ryan on the show tonight. And he's got a new. He's revamped a little bit under Mysterious Nocturnum, if I'm saying it correct. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Ryan Knights.
Tony, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me on. Hi, everybody in the chat. How you guys doing tonight? Now, you pronounced the name totally right, dude. No worries, man. You got that. You got that. And then you're talking about pork and the butter and the salt. And man, I'm starting to get hungry now. So I don't know if this is a good way to start the show, bro. But we're gonna roll with it anyway.
Yes, sir. So, you know, you've done a little bit of a rebrand, I guess you could say. You kind of did more. You know, you want to kind of go a certain way. And what have you been up to, man?
Dude, I kind of needed to. I was totally content with just telling stories and getting on a live stream and talking about Bigfoot and all that stuff, but I just kind of got bored after a while. And kind of it kind of exactly what you just said. Needed a little rebrand, a little jump start. I started this kind of my own little paranormal group back in May. We've been grinding since May, like going out every single weekend to film. There's even been times, because where I work second shift during the week, I'll go out sometimes even before work, a couple hours before work, and do some B-roll footage. Because, I put Haunted Sanford out, and it kind of gained itself a new life, which was really cool. I didn't expect that to happen. I would have been happy with like 400 or 500 views, to tell you the truth, but it kind of just, took on a life of its own. And I said, well, maybe I'll do another one. And like I said, dude, since May, we've been grinding. I must have at least 20 hours of just investigation footage, B-roll footage, any kind of filming that I could possibly do. So yeah, we've been grinding, myself, my brother James, and Jay, and Jay's girlfriend Sandy, and Oakley, my 9-year-old, has really kind of got the bug of paranormal investigation, I guess you could say, or spirit talking, as I like to call it. So
yeah, man, you've been busy, and so I saw that you have a trailer out for an upcoming, I guess, was it investigation series?
Yeah, what's funny is that Echoes of the Afterlife I originally was going to just make like another documentary, probably like an hour and a half documentary, like with Haunted Sanford, and it got to the point where I was just like, dude, I've got all this stuff, and when I figured out what I wanted to do with the doc, I was probably only going to use about 15 minutes of all the footage, all of the investigation footage that we had done. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work. And so I kind of decided that why don't I just kind of put out a bi-weekly show, because I kind of posed this question in the community section of the channel, and asked the people, hey, what do you guys want? What do you want? And they basically told me we'd like more stuff like Haunted Sanford and true scary stories, but we don't want any of the creepypastas. And I'm like, oh, that kind of sucks, because I like creepypastas. But so I figure, go an episode of Echoes, then true scary stories, then Echoes, just kind of do that. Kind of like an every other week thing, come out with a set show, I guess you could say. Whether it be just narration or an actual, something you can watch. You know what I mean? Like my attempt at Ghost Adventures, only not challenging ghosts to fist fights and not getting possessed every episode, pretty much. So, not that I'm not trying to throw shade that much, but
No. What was that? This is funny, but wasn't there an episode where one of the guys had to get really drunk and for the spirit to take over him or something? I swear, I think I saw an episode of Ghost Adventures. They was wilding out like that.
I think it was Zach. I think the thing that got me, that really made me, was the one time he tore his shirt off and threw his glasses down and said, "Come at me, bro." And I'm just like, come on, man. I'm like, this is a television show now. I'm like, you're better off watching Supernatural at this point. You know what I mean?
He's crazy. Like Chris Hill from Spirit Talkers. He actually went to the museum, and he was like, and he said basically it was like paying for an arm and a leg and just like all types of crazy. Like they said, oh, this is the most haunted whatever, and it would be like a shoelace or something crazy, like nothing, not even anything cool. But he said it was all right, but
Well, I mean, that's
go
the
ahead.
thing, honestly. I would absolutely love to visit that haunted museum of his, only because the fact that I mean, I don't know about haunted shoelaces. I'm sure there's a possibility, but, residual energy and all that good stuff. But, I mean, he's got Robert the Doll, Kevorkian's van. You know what I mean? He's got one of many Dybbuk boxes. I mean, Bela Lugosi's mirror. I mean, come on. That would just be cool just to go see those artifacts. Never mind, anything that might be, because I mean, I've seen shows on that too, and it looks like that when you go through the tour, they put on a good show for you. And I mean, if anything, just the artifacts and that be worth the price of admission to me.
Yeah. So you have dealt with a lot of creepy stuff in your life,
Yes,
in your very short
unfortunately.
life,
Yep.
your young
Yeah.
life. No, I'm just kidding. But what got you started, man? I ask this question to everybody to get the conversation kind of rolling. But what got you started on this path of creepiness or spookiness?
Uh, Man, I've always liked horror. I grew up with my grandfather because I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house as a kid. I mean, not that my parents were bad people. I was a hellion, so they definitely needed a break from me. But I was a grandpa's boy, so him and I spent a lot of time together. Whenever I didn't have to go to school the next day, I was at their house, hanging out with him, and we would watch, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Twilight Zone, Doctor Who. You know what I mean? Tales from the Dark Side, that kind of thing. And I really got into watching B horror movies. And I mean, for me, and it's just like what I taught all of my boys, including my 9-year-old now. I let him watch stuff he probably shouldn't be watching at 9 years old. But I always tell him, this is just a story, okay? That's all it is. What you're seeing is special effects, movie magic, that type of deal, that story. It's exactly that. It's fiction. It's just for fun. Whether it says based on a true story or not, nothing is really ever true when it comes out of Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, my Aunt Lisa, my Aunt Lisa and my Uncle Kendall get married, and at the same time, my grandparents buy a house on School Street in Sanford. And it's a two-family home. So my grandparents lived on the bottom floor, and my aunt and uncle lived on the top floor in the apartment upstairs. And my aunt used to work a partial overnight shift at a Shop and Save in Waterboro at the time. So my uncle and I would go to now if there's anybody that hears this that's from my hometown, they'll understand. We would go to Shop and Save, which is Hannaford now. Same country, they just changed the country. Same company, they just changed the name. And when you walk in the doors, to your immediate left now, there's like a pharmacy and there's like all kinds of hair care, skin care, medicine aisle, that type of thing. Well, back in the day when I was like 8 or 9 years old, that was all a VHS rental area. So every Friday afternoon, I get out of school, do my thing, hang out with my friends, and about 6 or 7 o'clock, I'd go to my grandparents' house, and my uncle and I would go down to Shop and Save and get a couple of nice, cheesy B horror movies. And we would, have a bunch of snacks and drinks, and we would go up into their apartment, and we'd watch these horror movies till like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. I would go downstairs and go to bed. Or they had an extra bedroom, so sometimes I would just crash in the spare bedroom. And through the course of a few months, and we even continued this in the summer, this was an every Friday night thing for us. We'd be sitting there in the living room watching horror movies. Now, above them was the attic. And we're talking between 10 and almost midnight. I could hear walking upstairs, but I never said anything. I mean, it wasn't stomping. It wasn't heavy. It was light. To me, I just thought my grandfather was upstairs because he was a very tall man, but he's a very skinny man. So he didn't displace that much weight. And I looked at my uncle one night and I said, "Is that grandpa upstairs?" He's like, "Oh, you hear that too?" I'm like, "I've been hearing that for a while now." He's like, It's like 11 o'clock at night. Do you honestly think that your grandfather is upstairs walking around in the attic just for fun? You know, I'm like, he's probably downstairs sleeping on the couch, which is pretty much what he was out by 10 o'clock every night. But my 8-year-old mind didn't really think that way. You know what I mean? And he's like, maybe it's a ghost. And I'm like, oh, want to go see? So he's like, yeah, sure. And that's the point when, you had that pucker factor because I didn't expect him to say yes. You know what I mean? I just expected him to be like, oh, we're watching a movie. Let's just watch the movie. He's like, come on, let's go. And he grabs a flashlight. I was like, oh, I don't know. But I went up anyway. To kind of give a quick layout, there's 2 front doors and a back door for both apartments. And so the front door that kind of led off of what would be the dining room just outside the living room, when you open up that door, that goes into like a front foyer area, but only you're up on like a wooden catwalk, more or less. But it's got a banister. It's the best way I can describe it. You can either kind of take a right and go down the stairs, and then you're at the front door area, or you can take a left and walk probably like 20 feet, and there's another door, and that leads up to a set of stairs that brings you to the attic. And just for effect, he clicks the flashlight on, and we walk over to this catwalk, up on the stairs, to go up to the attic, and we're at the top, like the top step or top, right there at the attic, the top of the steps. And the way the attic was designed was that you had kind of like a big square area that kind of went off. So it was like a big oddly shaped L area. When you get to the top of the stairs, immediately to your right, there's a door there. And when you open that door, somebody furnished that like a bedroom. Like it was all finished like a bedroom in there. It was nice, but I couldn't imagine anybody that would want to sleep up in the attic like that. That just kind of became a storage room. But as he panned the flashlight, he started from left to right. So as he pans the flashlight, it kind of goes along the wall there, and the flashlight kind of throws its light out into like this area that kind of goes off, like I said, an L shape. So it's kind of like the tall top. I can't think of the right words, but I think you kind of get my meaning. Mm-hmm. As the flashlight passes, just as the flashlight passes and hits the wall where the corners meet, there was a shadow there.
Ooh.
And it was a big shadow, which is weird because I've been dealing with that stuff, doing all this investigation stuff that we have for the past, since May. And every time you throw a light on something like that, it disappears. This didn't disappear. I mean, it was just there, but it was there for an instant. And it scared the shit out of me, dude. I'm like 8 years old. I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was really, I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking about this. And I don't know if he saw it. I never asked him even to this day. And I think it's kind of irrelevant now at this point because I know I saw it. And he's like, see, I guess it's not a ghost. And we go downstairs and go and finish the movie. Well, I kind of got curious. So over the course of the next however many, I don't know how much time had passed, but I would grab my Matchbox cars. And I would go up the catwalk and I'd go up into the attic and I would sit at the top. I would sit on the, the second step down and I'd play with my cars right there on the top step. And I always knew that this presence would show up because I would feel it before I saw it. And, you know what I mean? Every hair on your body stands up. You get the goosebumps. The air gets heavy. You just feel something, but it wasn't anything that was malicious or mean or scary. I was never actually scared. Just that one first time when I saw it. And I would look up and there it is. It's just standing up against the corner where I saw it before. And I'd say, hey buddy, how you doing? And I'd just keep playing and I would just talk out loud to something, a shadow in the corner. It was kind of like having your own Casper the Friendly Ghost, if you want to kind of look at it like that. But I named him Harvey because, I don't know, it just came to me. I don't know if it was like, he was sending me messages in my head, my name is Harvey, but that's kind of just what I started calling him,
Is that the only place that y'all saw him in that house?
That was it. That's the weird thing about this, because I've heard so many stories of hauntings, and in the process of doing this, being contacted by a lot of people, now I'm going to start doing houses. It's kind of one of those things where if somebody has a spirit in their house, it's literally all over the house. I know there's some that like kind of they have their base in one area where the presence of the energy is strongest, but Harvey never came out of the attic. Like once you left the attic, if you were in my aunt and uncle's apartment, you would hear him walking around sometimes up there. Sometimes you would even hear that bedroom door open and close, but it was you'd
Mm.
have to be really listening. He didn't slam it, which was the weird thing. Sometimes when I was up there, he would knock over a box of my grandfather. Okay, I gotta say this. I don't know if anybody else's grandfather did this, but my grandfather collected nuts and bolts and nails. Like he never threw anything away, and he always kept Cool Whip containers, those little plastic containers.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, I'm not kidding you. When he passed away, we must have found 12 big boxes of those just empty washed containers. And every once in a while, Harvey would knock a friggin' box over and spill containers out of it. And I'm like, dude, you're going to get me in trouble. And then there would be, because it was weird, because it would communicate through almost kind of like a feeling or a presence. So it almost felt like he was laughing at me. You know what I mean? And then wouldn't you know, my grandfather would go upstairs because that man was former military. He was meticulous about his shit. Yeah. He'd be like, did you go up there and knock one of my boxes over? I'm like, nope, that was Harvey. He's like, who the hell is Harvey? And I'm like, the ghost that lives upstairs, Grandpa. And he just, that day that I said that, he just looked at me and he goes, oh, you know about that, huh? Oh, okay. And that was pretty much all we ever talked about out of that. So I would, go ahead.
I was about to ask you. I was like, man, so did he say anything about it? Because it sounds like he knew, but it sounds like he's like, I'm not going to talk about it.
That was pretty much kind of what it was with him. I mean, he was open about a lot of things, but he wouldn't spend a whole lot of time talking about it. That was kind of his big thing. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah, it's there. We've acknowledged it. Let's move on type of deal. He wasn't one of those deep conversationalists, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? When it came to certain things. Now, if it was like cars or the war, then that would be a different story. But, but as far as something like that, he's like, oh, you know about that. Okay. And that was pretty much all that was ever said about that as far as that goes,
Yeah.
And
one thing that was I'm very what interests me about different haunting of places, and a theory that I'm always interested to hear from different people. What do you think? So you call it an echo. Is that like just I guess a moment of energy? Can you explain an echo?
oh, how I came up with the name Echoes from the Afterlife?
Yeah, no, just like I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, what is that moment where like Harvey knocks over the box of of Cool Whip containers, or you see him in the corner of the attic. What is that? You think?
That's a good question.
Or what do you think? What do you think it could be? I guess is my question.
Well, I mean, as far as I haven't quite put my finger on the fact on how spirits and manifest their energies, and it to me, I guess, and that goes in with the name of the show. An echo being something that whether it be like a spirit that hasn't moved on, or it's like a stone tape or an M theory type of thing, you know what I mean, where it's not an active haunting but a residual haunting. The energy is just set on a loop like a time recorder, you know what I mean, a tape recorder. I don't know, it's hard to tell. I mean, I think, well, okay, let me try to give an example. Let's see if I can answer this, because I don't want to ramble on and just kind of give you a word salad. Last night, a buddy of mine gives me a call. I pulled into the house here because me and the wife and the kids went for a little ride around town, and we came home and he gives me a call and he's like, "Hey, let's talk for a few." I'm like, "All right." So he comes out and he just lives right across the street, and we were talking about stuff about the filming and all that stuff, and so I pulled my Spirit Talker app out, and we walked over to his yard and sat down on his picnic table next to his house, and the spirit box just started popping off, man. And we start having a conversation. Well, as I've learned from a couple of other people, this one person in particular who does this like twice a night, every night on TikTok, in messaging back and forth with him, what I've gathered is that spirits will, when they talk into a spirit box or any type of haunting happens, like Harvey manifesting himself into a shadow or knocking over a box of Cool Whip containers, it's kind of like gathering up energy and sending out a burst of energy, almost kind of like an echo. An echo in some respects. I mean, I could be wrong in the way I think about that. It's just kind of my take on it. You know what I mean? But
That's a good take though, because that's I've heard all types of crazy theories. I mean, I just what it interests me about it, and I guess what I always think about it is they often say, and I've heard people say this, all over the place, but it's like we talk about the multiple dimensions and different universes
different
and
realities, all that. Yeah, I got you.
yeah. And so one thing, a theory that I kind of find interesting about like a certain type of echo is that basically there are moments in the universe where our timelines, our realities, they touch just for a moment. And one thing that I find very interesting about that is, for instance, like I'm in this house that was built in the 1950s or whatever,
Hmm.
and there's moments where I hear things and I'm like, what was that? Or like it sounds like someone's upstairs walking around. And I often wonder if that's like a different reality, you know, of just touching for a moment where they're, in their timeline or they're in their reality where they're just walking across to one of the bedrooms to pick something up. And I just happen to hear it and it's like, what? And that's kind of what I always find interesting about that theory.
Well, it's funny. You're kind of onto something. Are you familiar with string theory and M theory?
Man, I was talking to my brother-in-law about string theory for like 5 seconds, and I've heard of it. I just don't know much about it. I'm very interested to hear what you know about it.
Well, I don't. As you probably have already figured out, string theory is this overly complicated thing. Honestly, it really is. That's what I get from it. I mean, in all honesty, I'm not trying to put myself down, but I am not the sharpest crayon in the box, when it comes to certain things. But what I gather in the most extreme of layman's terms is that string theory. If you take a string, um, it's kind of like that's time almost. And time is thought to be this linear thing, timeline as far as, say the past, the present, the future. And what I'm gathering, because I've been listening a lot to that dude, Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar, and a lot of the stuff he says when he's doing his channeling, I mean, people may think it's BS. And at first, there's some things I'm a little about, but a lot of the stuff that's said makes sense to me. And the way that I look at it is that, our past, present, future it's like a string. Well, M theory is one of those things where, and I don't know what the M stands for, just to let you know, but let's use an example for that, if we may. You live in a house. You and your wife and your kids. You've got your own house. You guys, your wife fell in love with this old house that was built in like the early 1800s. It's in beautiful shape. You don't have to do much work to it. Whatever you got to do, you can do on your own as side projects on the weekends or whatever. It's part of your honey-do list. And you're downstairs. You feel like you got to go up into the bedroom because you forgot your phone up there or whatever. So you go walking up into the bedroom, and as you turn the corner, you see what looks like this like apparition or this kind of like a ghost standing there. You can almost see through, of an old man that turns and looks at you, opens his mouth, and then he disappeared. Like he screams and opens his, he disappears. Now, on the same token, this old guy, he's just finished dinner. He's going up into his library, and he goes to pick a book off the shelf. He's going to sit in his favorite chair and read a book a little bit before he goes to bed. And he hears this weird walking, and as he turns and looks in the doorway, he sees this ghost of a person come through the doorway wearing funny clothes, and all of a sudden opens their mouth and goes, "Rah!" and disappears. Now, imagine that happening at the same time. You're seeing him and he's seeing you, but it's two different timelines coming together, like a piece of that string touching it, curling up and touching itself. And now
Yep.
you've just shared a moment in the same space with the same energy in time. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense, and that's kind of that might be exactly what I'm trying to say. When it comes to what I think ghosts are, because there's a certain. I mean, there's something that someone said. I can't. It might have been Hunters of the Paranormal. He said that energy basically goes. It doesn't. It's not destroyed. It goes somewhere else.
Yeah. I kind of look at it like that, and you know what? The way from what he says, it sounds right to me. The main thing is we don't know for sure, but I think one of the things that we can mostly all of us can agree on in some form or another is that time is. I kind of look at it as a circular thing. It literally weaves past, present, and future together. I personally, to me, the past is the past and the future hasn't happened yet. But I think the future has happened because it all kind of weaves into one big thing.
Hmm.
Instead of it being like a string or a linear or a ribbon, it curls and circles around itself, almost kind of like if you were weaving a basket, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's a very interesting topic, and that's one thing that to get, your opinion about it, but your thoughts too as well. Kind of keeping it moving with your life, man. I know you have a few more creepy things that's went on as you were growing up and even into your teenage years and now and I guess your young adult years, I guess you could say. I know you got a few more stories and things have happened, man.
Yeah, what's weird is that I remember a conversation that we've had actually several conversations through text and phone, kind of privately off, the YouTube thing here and live streaming. And I think I remember telling you one time we were talking about, that little hunting trip that I took up to Oxford, Maine, Oxford County, back in '98,
Mhm.
where I didn't even know what a Bigfoot was. You know what I mean? I had no idea what that creature was. Because ever since that whole ghostly thing, I mean, there were a few more experiences. I remember finding a Ouija board in the attic one time, and myself and three of my cousins there was this like family get together over Thanksgiving, and we just happened to have it over my grandmother's house. I think I was like 11 or 12, and we'd found this Ouija board, and we brought it down into the room that I stayed in, and we had it on the bed, and we were trying to play around with it. And my grandmother came in. Now she was an extremely devout Roman Catholic. And holy crap, did she lost her mind. Like she came in and she did this like quadruple backhand, like pop, 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 hit us all in one shot, grabbed the board, broke it in 4 pieces. You know what I mean? She lost her noodles. And I never really understood what the deal was with that. I was like, ooh, Ouija board, let's talk to ghosts. Because, when you're a kid, you're just like, ooh, the excitement of it. You don't really know that stuff like that you shouldn't really play with, unless you really know what you're doing, which, do any of us really. But, and there was also, did I, because this ties in with it, I sent you that clip that myself and one of the team members had done in this little cemetery where we made the flag, where we asked the spirits to move a flag, right?
Yes, yeah, you sent me that.
Yeah, I remember the first time going to that particular little grave site, that little family plot graveyard out in the woods. When a friend of mine, see the way, just to give everybody listening and yourself a little bit of context, Main Street in Sanford runs all the way out in Shapley. 109 actually runs quite a bit up the state of Maine, but it runs through Midtown Sanford. That's kind of Main Street down through to South Sanford into Wells and kind of stops at Route 1. On the lower end of the south end of Main Street, you've got like a mini golf place. There's a patch of woods, and there's this like hotel. It's called the Sanford Inn now, but it used to be called the Bar H Motel. And you have the motel, and then you've got a couple of cottages that sit right next to it that were owned by the hotel. I don't know if they still are or not. But behind that cottage was this just little family plot cemetery sitting out there. And a good friend of mine, this guy, Bruce, well, he's a kid then, Bruce, lived there with his mom and his dad in this little cottage until they had been able to get a house in the upper part of town. And he tells me, because I was sleeping over his house one night, and he tells me, he's like, hey, after supper, because it was like, this was in the summertime, so it was still daylight out at like, 7 o'clock at night. He's like, hey, there's a graveyard out back. You want to go check it out? I'm like, yeah. And so we go probably, I don't know, 20 yards. It was literally right there in the woods, right behind the cottage they were staying in. And there's this little cemetery right there, which is that same one I sent you the clip from. And they had little stones, but the weird thing is that at the time they had, and this is the only time I've ever seen them, but there were a few, it's the best way to describe it. It was like a little metal case, like a weatherproof case made out of metal, and it had a piece of plexiglass over the top of it, and there was a card inside with somebody's name, date of birth, death, the whole 9 yards. And there were 2 or 3 of those that were just stuck in the ground, and I think they were to denote where somebody was buried. I believe so, because it was the weirdest thing. It's the only time I've ever seen that. So me being a stupid kid, I grabbed one and I brought it back to the house.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, bad idea. So his mom and dad go to bed. Bruce has a Ouija board.
Oh my God.
And
this is getting worse. This is getting worse.
Yeah, it is. It's getting worse. And I learned something about Bruce's mom at this point too, not long after that. But these folks were from the South. Like his mom, she had that Southern accent, would just melt your soul every time you listen to it. Made the best cornbread I've ever had in my life. But anyway, so we sneaked this into the house. We didn't think anything of it. We're like 12 years old. We're stupid. Breaks out the Ouija board, and we put the Ouija board on the floor, and we sit on either side of it. And to the left of us, sitting on the floor next to the Ouija board, was this little metal thing with the name and all that stuff sitting right next to it. And we start talking to the Ouija board, and apparently the spirit who belonged to that little marker was with us, and he was unhappy because shit started happening. Like, we'd be sitting there using it, and we're asking questions, and dude, like literally we had both of our hands, like our first 3 fingers on each side of the planchette. So, both hands. And I'm looking, I'm like, you moving this? And he's like, you moving that? I'm like, I'm not moving that. And this thing is just zipping around the board. So when you watch videos where you see the planchette zipping around, I'm going to tell you from experience that shit happens, man. Whatever it was, like his dresser all of a sudden would just rattle for a second. Like someone walked up to it and just kind of shook it a little bit, because it was one of those old style dressers that had like the 8 drawers, 4 on each side, and it had the big mirror connected to it. So you would hear the mirror rattle a little bit in the wooden casing. We both had cups of water up on his nightstand, and the cup of water I had fell over, and it wasn't really making much noise. All of a sudden, his mom, boom, busts through the door. It's like 12:30 at night in the morning. And she's like, what did you do? And we're like, what? She's like, you weren't making noise. I know what's in this house. And I was like, oh no. So she sits down on the other side of us, and she puts her hands on the planchette, and she starts talking in this like Southern lady drawl, like stern voice. Now I'm going to tell you, that type of thing. Like she was dead serious. I could tell this little short red-haired lady had more hair, and like she was like, and I'm not saying this like as for what she looked like, but if you could picture Cousin It with big poofy red hair and big black glasses, that's kind of what his mom looked like, because her hair was always all over the place. And so you couldn't really see her face too well. And she's just like, everything stopped. Like it was like night and day. I mean, because the presence got heavy in the room. It was kind of like this really ominous feeling, and it just all smoothed right out. And she looks at me and she goes, I'm not mad, but you better grab that marker and you come with me right now, because I know you're the one who snuck it in here. And I'm like, how do you know this? Bruce is just like, that's my mom, bro. That's just my mom. So we go out.
Man.
We go, yeah, we walk out. She grabs a flashlight. Now, mind you, through all this shit that's happening, his dad is snoring in the other room, never wakes up. Like, that dude snored like a Husqvarna chainsaw, and we heard him the whole time, and he never fucking woke up. And I was like, he's a really skinny man, so a noise coming out of a guy like that. But she grabbed the flashlight, and we walk out there, and we set it back in the ground. She actually, and the funny thing is that I didn't remember where it was set. So I don't know what was going on with that, but she walks over and we stop and she points her flashlight right at a certain patch of ground. She's like, put it there. That's where it belongs. I put it in the ground on that spot. And she says, we're very, very sorry. They're very sorry. I hope you understand that and know this. And she said a few words in a language I can't understand. And then we went back into the house and everything was hunky-dory. And she's like, you boys go to bed now. Gives me a new cup of water. So I'm in a sleeping bag on the floor. Bruce is up in his bed. And I'm laying there. He's like, hey, you awake? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I can't sleep. He's like, neither can I. I'm like, dude, what the hell was that? He's like, my mom's a witch. You're just going to have to deal with that.
What?
And I'm like, okay. He's like, not Salem Witch Trials witch, like Happy White Wiccan witch. And I'm like, well, damn. And I looked at her completely different than I ever have. And I was friends with Bruce. Like, that was probably the 7th grade. And all the way up through high school, we were friends. And even then, even like when I was a senior in high school, she'd be like, you ain't taking nothing from graveyard, have you? I'm like, no, ma'am. No, I haven't. You know what I mean? And that was just like having those kinds of experiences, like say from the age of 8 or 9 to like 12 years old, a few different experiences. Because I mean, during all this time, I'm going up into the attic, sitting in a chair and just talking to Harvey. I mean, that was one of my favorite things to do, because it was like you could go up and talk to him and it's not like he's trying to interrupt you. If he was feeling a certain kind of way or he wanted to console you, you could feel it. It's really the weirdest thing, dude. It really is. And probably from the age of 13 or on, I kind of avoided all of the paranormal stuff. I knew it was there. Sometimes I could feel it. I don't know if talking with Harvey and having that kind of sensation, or I guess as somebody would say, having a consciousness open a little bit. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, maybe. But I kind of just avoided all that stuff. And then, going on that hunting trip with a friend and his dad, and then seeing, the hairy man of the forest up there, the ridge, or Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or as we call it up here, the ridge runner. That kind of just opened the door wide open and just kind of literally ripped it right off the hinges. And after that, it's been, just kind of all downhill from there, I guess,
Let's hear that Bigfoot story, man.
You want to hear the Bigfoot story? Okay.
I want to hear it. That's one of the.
All right.
Someone in chat said that. They say want to hear it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to open up the chat. Okay. All right. All right. So for you, Tony, for everybody in chat, all I can relay is what I experienced. Believe, not believe, that's 100% okay, because I was there and I still don't know how much I believe it. I still have dreams about this shit. And it's not like Bigfoot's chasing me through the woods and going to pop my head off like a daisy, which he probably could have at that point. But it's just reliving it, just seeing the whole experience in my dreams. That's why I can remember it so well, which is really weird, because that's one of the things that I wish never happened to me, and I wish I couldn't remember, but I do. So, where to begin? My friend, I'll call him D. It's like the first letter of his name. He's passed on. He passed away like 5 or 6 years ago at this point. And right now, anyway. Him and his dad would go on moose hunting trips up Maine every single year. And, they got a moose every year. It was really, it was friggin' awesome. I mean, I'm seeing the pictures, and I would go over to the house after they got back to hang out with him, or go target shooting in, the side lot of their yard. And you see in the barn, you see a big old moose hanging there. I was like, oh, that's really cool, and the old man's out there chopping it up, and he's got all the stuff to do it. I mean, his dad was an ex-Vietnam vet, and he was one of the crazy people that took extra tours because he liked it. I'm not saying anything about his character because the man was very kind and always nice to me. But anyway, Dennis asked me, do you want to go with us this year? We're going up to Oxford County. My dad, rented a cabin. And I was sure, why not? Now, at that point in my life, I'm like 19 years old, and all I did was just drink and smoke and party and have a good time and cavort with women and just have a blast. You know what I mean? I that was like my phase right there. And I knew I was going out that next morning. I knew when I was going out that night to go hang out with my friends and get a drink on. I was going to be going on a hunting trip the next morning. So I packed a bag, get everything I needed, put my 30-30 in the back, everything I needed for that trip. And I went out, partied with my buddies, and I showed up at their house at like 4 o'clock in the morning. That's what he told me to be there for. Because at this time, there was no such thing as cell phones. And I'm like, dude, don't call the house because I ain't going to be home. I'll be there. And I show up, hadn't slept. I throw all my shit in the back of their Bronco. And they had like one of those like 1981 or 2 full-size Ford Broncos, big thing, lifted the whole 9 yards. And I laid down in the back seat, passed out. Probably, I don't know how long the trip took. I think I was told the trip took like about almost 5 hours to get there. And I remember waking up because I'm like being rattled awake. And I'm in the back of this Bronco and I sit up and it's daylight and we're on this like access logging road, dude. And the trees are so close to the Bronco. I'm like, wow, where the hell are we, man? And then his old man takes this turn down a trail that I just thought was a walking trail. And I don't know how he fit that big Ford down that trail because I swear to God, dude, on either side, the man was a genius behind the wheel, dude. He had so much skill because it must have been like a 1/4 of an inch on either side of the vehicle running that big old Bronco right down this little trail. And have you ever seen the movie The Evil Dead?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so picture the cabin from The Evil Dead.
Okay.
We roll up into this little area in front of a cabin, and that's the first thing I thought of. I'm like, oh my God, this is the fucking Evil Dead. I'm like, am I going to find the Necronomicon inside there? I'm just like, wow. I mean, this thing, we get out of the vehicle, and I imagine you have, but if you've been so far out into the wilderness or the woods that you can hear birds and like normal wildlife sounds, but yet the silence is so deafening at the same time. It's like absolutely beautiful, but intimidating AF when you're out there. And we get into the cabin, and I expected the cabin to look on the inside like it did on the outside. Fucking horrifying. Sorry, can I swear or should I not?
Let it rip, man. I mean,
okay,
hey,
man.
Keep it to a minimum, but yeah. I mean,
okay, I got you. Sorry if your kids are listening. Anybody, sorry about that. I'm just getting into it, man. Yeah, so
I know. Hey, you're telling a story that's that's been on your mind for however for all these years.
Oh God, God, it sucks. But anyway, we get into, and the cabin actually was really. It was nice. It wasn't too bad. A little dusty in there, but I mean, it looks like somebody had stayed there recently. And I mean, I'd given this story to a lady here in Maine named Michelle Soulier, who is a Bigfoot researcher, and she came out with a book called Bigfoot in Maine. I would recommend that if you like the subject of Bigfoot and the history of it in the state, you know what I mean, in any given place. I would recommend anybody in the chat to go to search up Bigfoot in Maine by Michelle Soulier, or you can go to like thegreenhandbookshop.com, something like that. I think you can get it on Amazon. It's not a very long read and it's not expensive, but I have a copy of it. She sent it to me because she was on my podcast at one time. And it's a fantastic book. It's a fun read, great stories, and she does a really good job of digging in the history. She wanted me to help her try to find this cabin, and I'm like, listen, I've lived through it. I don't want to revisit it that much more. You know what I mean? So if you don't want to use my story, that's fine. I'm not going to take it to heart. You're still my friend, but I've been there, done that. I don't really want to revisit it other than telling the story again. Anyway, so the short of it was that we probably had about a half a day. I think we got there, let's see if it was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think we got there somewhere around 11 or noon. We made decent time, but those old logging roads and trails were so bumpy. I mean, we were going at a snail's pace going down these roads. But so my buddy's dad grabs his rifle, puts his his Marco Polo cap on, whatever hat he was wearing. It was this weird hat. And he just takes off into the woods like he lived there. And I'm like, all right, rock and roll. At the time, my buddy, excuse me, was a very, very large man. He was like 6'1", but he was like 350 pounds. Like he could have been a lineman in the National Football League, a big boy. So he didn't walk very far. And I think that we probably went, I don't know, quarter of a mile, if that, behind the cabin itself. And we found an area that had like, it was kind of like, if you've ever been walking through the woods and you've got like a lot of dense brush and you're walking through shrubbery and all that stuff, and you come out into an area where it's a little bit open and there's like a few trees and you can see kind of crisscrossing game trails where you can plainly see like the deer and the moose and every other animal is running or walking through there. That's kind of exactly what it looked like. And there was this one little area where like, cause it was weird because it was a trail leading in, which we were on, and there was a walking trail kind of leading out on the other side. But basically it was like this kind of octagonal shaped area that had all kinds of thicket or heavy brush lining it. It was one of the weirdest things. Not weird now, but at the time I'd never really seen anything like that. And behind one of these like shrubbery walls, as I always called them, was a tree that had fallen down, and you could sit down on that tree and you could poke a gun barrel. And because there were spots in the brush where you could poke a gun barrel through and see, and if there was an animal there, dude, it was like the perfect natural hunting blind. So that's where we said we were going to hunt. We go back to the cabin, and the three of us are just light up a fire, had a pot, eating beans and hot dogs, and having a grand old time shooting the breeze. Fast forward, we get up early, butt crack of dawn, and his old man takes off into the woods. He found the spot he wanted to be in. We walk out to the spot we found the afternoon previous, and we're just kind of sitting there, and the sun is just barely starting to come up. You know what I mean? Like when the sun starts to rise above, you kind of almost get that like reddish glow from the very early morning. And we're probably sitting there 10 or 15 minutes, and we thought we hit the jackpot because there was something big coming our way it sounded probably like it was like a couple 100 yards away. We thought it was a moose, because moose, if you've never been around one, they are very large, heavy animals that just stomp through everything. Much like what we just saw, we were about to see, I should say. And as this thing is getting closer, the wind is blowing at us, so we are actually downwind. And it was kind of like, if you've ever been in a musty basement that had a really heavy smell to it, times that by about 50 with a really strong urine smell. So it was enough to burn your nose and eyes.
Oh, man.
And this thing is coming, and you can hear it better. And I'm like, dude. And he's like, there's a moose coming. I'm like, I don't think that's a moose. It's 2 legs. He's like, you don't know what you're hearing. You've never done that before. I'm like, I have hunted deer before. I am not stupid. That's not a moose. That's walking on 2 legs. He's like, no, it's a moose. He's all excited, man, because his dad always shot a moose every year. He never got the chance, so he wanted to really bad. Like, it's like the one ring. He needed it. It was his precious. So there was that 1 second where the footfalls and the smell it was so strong. I can almost smell it now, recalling this. And it was like a second before this thing came through the thicket that it was like eye of the storm. Everything got really, really quiet. It was almost like somebody hit the mute button. And then all of a sudden, poof, this thing comes walking through the thickets. We're only about 25 feet away from this thing, 20 feet away. And this thing stops and just kind of turns its whole upper body and goes, and looks right down at us. I was like, oh, shoot. We're both shaking. We both peed all over ourselves. Because as far as I could see, that was an effing monster, dude. I didn't know what the hell that was. I had no inkling, never even heard of a Bigfoot. Didn't know that's what it was. And this thing's looking at me. I'm looking at him. D, right next to me, is shaking like a friggin' chihuahua when it's too cold outside. Picture that one. 300-mile man shaking like a chihuahua when it's too cold out. And
Man.
he's got a 30-40 Craig sitting in his lap, which is a big gun. That shoots a big bullet, man. And he's shaking, trying to lift it. And I just put my hand on his and like, no, don't do that. I don't want to die, dude. Because if this thing wanted to, it could have taken a step and reached over with its big long arms and hands and popped my head off like a daisy. I was not about to have all that smoke. And big, and you know what's weird is looking at this thing's face. I can understand why, you know, a good Bigfoot picture when you see one, right? Like, even if it's a nice clear one, or you see footage where you think it's legit, but you can't see the face.
Yeah.
There's no hair on the face of these things. There's hair all around the face of it. So it makes like this weird natural shadow. Like, I'm staring right into these big round hubcap eyes this thing has. And I can only see half of its face. I know it was there, but it was just this weird shadow. You know what I mean? The what's the word? Slightly cone-shaped head. Its deltoids were as big as my head, dude. Just this massive monstrosity. Long hair. I mean, but weird because there wasn't that much hair on the chest. You know what I mean? You could tell it had big old pecs and a 6-pack, or like probably like a 30-pack because it was monstrous. And I don't know. It felt like 5 minutes we were standing there staring at each other, and it just snorted and walked away. Now, this is a decent sized clearing, dude. I don't know. It would have taken me quite a few steps to get across it, saying that. And from sitting down, dude, this looked like a 10-footer. He was big, real big. Like this brush, just let me see what I can. Okay. I'm not going to try to be vulgar in this situation, but I'm sitting down on a tree. I'm 5'8". Okay. I'm 5'8", 5'7", 5'8". I'm sitting down on this like down tree, and this like shrubbery in front of me is probably coming up to about 3 or 4 inches above my head. Okay. So if I wanted to see the game trail, I had to look through the holes in it. I'm looking up at this thing, and I could see he was a boy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's how big this thing was, how close it was to us. Dude, I kid you not. 3 good long steps, and it was in through the shrubbery on the other side and gone.
Man.
Yeah. Now, you know how people talk about infrasound?
Yes.
I think there's something to that. There's something, maybe not that, but weird, because it was probably 5 or 6 seconds. It was really quick. Right after this thing went through the shrubbery on the other side on its way, it let out a howl. It was so freaking loud, it hurt my ears. Like I had to cover my ears, and it was still too loud. And we sat there probably for a good 40, 45 minutes after that. And I was just so confused and dizzy and drowsy. And I think I drooled on myself a little bit. And probably after that amount of time, my head felt like it started to clear up enough that we could stand up and walk back to the cabin. And Dennis D said his name. Screw it. He goes and lights a fire, and we're both sitting by the fire, and we sat there for a while. We heard a gunshot, and a little while later, his dad comes back. He shot a deer. He's like, didn't see a moose, and he's dragging this thing. And he goes and he does whatever he's going to do with it, and he comes back, and he's like, what's the matter with you guys? And I just kind of looked at him. He's like, oh. And we both kind of looked at him like, what do you mean by oh? He's like, oh, that? You saw what yelled? Oh, man, those were like the rock apes in Nam. And he just turns around and goes the other way. I'm like, can you explain that to me, please?
That's insane. That is insane.
For, like I said, D, he passed away from because of diabetes. He didn't take care of himself, man. You know, it sucked. But we were still pretty close after that, but he would never talk about it. That was like one of those subjects, like I tried 1,000 times, and every time he shut the door. He's like, I'm like, you remember? He's like, I don't remember anything. That never happened. And I'm like, it sure as shit did happen because I pissed all over myself, dude. I didn't imagine that. I mean, I'm not a toddler, dude. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He took it to the grave with him. He would never speak of it. Never.
Let me ask you this real quick. So he said that he saw, it sounded like rock apes in Vietnam. Did he tell you any of those stories? Or did he
You know what's funny?
them?
You know what's funny? He talked about it a little bit that night after he got the deer hung and he gutted it hung. Because the gunshot sounded close. So I don't think he was that far away. I think he was on his way back to us to come have lunch, to the cabin to have lunch. And the deer just came across and he, boom, took it. Because we were there for another couple of days, and my buddy and I never went back out in the woods. He didn't want to go out in the woods. He was just pretty much done at that point. So we just kind of hung out around the fire pit, and we would drink beers and shoot the breeze and all that stuff. But his dad went out a few, those other couple days we were there, because we were there for 3 days. And he said he saw moose, but he was never able to get a shot off on him. So it must have been an unshootable position, because this dude I've seen him at the range at his house from 100 yards away, pow, put a fucking bullseye right into a small paper target. So, with a scope, and he was using a 300 Win Mag. So, I mean, there was a big hole in that deer. I'm going to tell you right now. Why I didn't use a deer gun, I don't know, but I'd have to ask him. But anyway, that night he was talking about, he's like, yeah, he goes, you guys would call them Bigfoot. And I'm like, what's a Bigfoot? He's like, you don't know what that is? I'm like, I never heard of that. He goes, well, you just saw one, didn't you? I'm like, I saw something. I saw a monster, but I don't know what that was. He's like, yeah, we used to call those rock apes in Vietnam. It was because there would be platoons of us or squads or companies of us that would go out going after the VC. And you would have these big hairy things that would be trailing us. They looked like giant 8, 9, 10 foot tall monkeys walking on 2 legs like we do. Not like, how you see a chimpanzee walk. He goes, they walk like we do. But it would come to a certain point that we would have to watch out for the VC, and we'd have to watch out for them, because they would throw big rocks at us. So we'd just shoot at them, and we hit them a couple times, and they would fall down, get back up, run away. He goes, well, I don't think we ever killed one that we know of. But I was just like blown away, dude. I'm like, really? And you can go and look that stuff up. And there a lot of soldiers, there are stories that have come out of the Vietnam era that talked about rock apes. And there's also stories about the lizard men of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which he said that there's been experiences that he's had and other guys like him have had on the trail like that before. So I'm like, Jesus, dude. He goes, because it's fun. You'd find these random caves and they stunk horribly. And there was a few guys that had told him, when they would mix companies or a company or a platoon would get shot down a lot, and then they would mix with another one, so they'd make new ones. And there were a lot of guys that were talking about lizard men coming out of caves after them with these big walking lizards, and it's just like in rock apes. And I'm like, dude, it wasn't. I think it was like a couple of days after we had come home. I worked second shift in a restaurant at the time, and I still lived with my parents. I came home that night, and I got on the couch, put a blanket on myself. I was watching a TV show. Well, I apparently had passed right out, and the TV was still on, and I think I woke up somewhere around 4 or 5 in the morning. And I'm opening my eyes and I'm looking at this, and there's this, the Patterson Gimlin film.
Mm-hmm.
They were showing whatever show this was, a documentary that was on, was showing the Patterson Gimlin film, and I was instantly awake because that's what I saw, minus the memories. So, like I said, this was a boy, but what was on the Patterson Gimlin film walked and looked exactly like what I saw in the woods that day. And I was just like, dude. And so I kept watching it. And they're like, this is Bigfoot, or known as Sasquatch, many names, wood booger. And I'm like, wood booger? Like, that's a fun one. But yeah, so that was my introduction to that fun.
Man, that's a great story too, man. Because like, especially seeing the detail that you've seen, and really, that's a lot of the, I guess you could say, a lot of the people that see that, Bigfoot, is they don't really want to talk about it. They see it, and especially with you guys seeing it really that close. I can definitely see your buddy just being like, yeah, no, never talking about it again.
Oh, don't get me wrong. It was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I mean, I call it a nightmare. To me, it's a nightmare. It's not, I guess, not as bad now as it was, but just reliving that in my head when I'm sleeping at night dude, I wake up in I kind of like, how you scare yourself awake type of thing. I can understand why you can never get a clear picture of one of these things. Why it's hard, you know what I mean? Like, because people are like, well, if you don't see a body, it didn't happen, or dude, this thing was like a hairy tank on legs. I mean, I picture 2 Arnold Schwarzeneggers, then you're looking at the muscle definition of what this thing looked like. I mean, it had a lot of hair and it was long, but you could clearly see that this thing was like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Type of thing. It's just like, why are you looking at me? It's like a giant hairy Arnold. I mean, it was so massive and strong, and it moved so fast and so fluid. Like, something that big, to me, to move in that way is almost like an oxymoron. And I mean, I've told people this story before, and they've laughed right in my face. So that's why I say to you and everyone in the chat, thank you for listening to my story. I really appreciate you guys welcoming me in, but believe, don't believe, that's 100%, up to you guys. Just, take it for what it's worth. I was there, type of thing. And I'm not trying to sound like a jerk when I say this. I have no a-hole intentions when I say it, but if you believe it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. Cause I was there. I know what I saw. You know what I mean? And it was like, I wish I hadn't have seen it, truthfully.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because that's a pretty crazy encounter, man. I've heard a lot of stories from different people, and a lot of times it's they hear something, but that's a great story, and I appreciate you sharing that with us, man.
Well, I appreciate you listening. It's sometimes, man, all you need is just somebody listen to you. You know what I mean? Just, you don't have to say anything. Just, talk.
Yeah.
Just listen. Yeah, because sometimes there are a lot of people where I've kind of come to terms with it. I understand to a certain degree what's going on now, especially doing all of this ghost hunting stuff. I have to use the term paranormal investigation. I'm not saying I'm like a seer or I'm a super sensitive or anything like that, but I can look at a place and be like, there's something there. You know what I mean? You look at certain places, or you get a feeling of something, and you're like, yeah, there's something going on in there. I mean, I guess the investigation part is going to see if there really is something there. But for me personally, I just talk to spirits. I talk to ghosts. I know how it sounds, but it's probably for me, the easiest way to communicate what I do. And it's just weird, man. Like ever since May, going on and doing this stuff, like I've seen a lot of ghost hunters. I've recently upgraded, so I got a new camera. It's got the IR night vision, so you can see what I'm seeing now when I'm outside at night or in the woods or in a place where there's no lights. Because, like, probably the first few episodes of so many episodes of Echoes is there's going to be a lot of dark. I mean, because even though I had a lot of light sources, the camera I was using before, which was a Rebel Canon Rebel, taking video with it, you didn't see the light so well. So I'm working to try to fix that, like kind of like split screen it or show in a screen beforehand what the area looks like in the daytime when you can't see what I'm doing at night. If that makes any sense. So you get an idea of where I am and what the area looks like.
Yeah, for sure. Let's look at chat here, man. Let's let you gather your thoughts here, man. Miss B, His J, Yehola, how's it going, Miss B? I hope you're doing all right. Untrimmed Savage, how you doing, man? Thank you for showing up, Miss B. Thank you for coming. And yes, Patrick Meekin, like I said, Friday, he's on like Donkey Kong. He's gonna bring it to. He's got a bunch of stories that he wants to share. Let's see here. Richard, how's it going, man? Hope you're doing all right. Let's keep going down here. AAO, how's it going? Hey, I appreciate you commenting on different videos and kind of giving your thoughts on a lot of the stuff that I got going on and a lot of the different stories that I tell. I appreciate that. So,
well,
Brian, go ahead.
Well, if I could, I'd like to make a comment that normally when your show is on, when you go live, I'm usually at work. Like you're going to be going live all week from the sounds of it, pretty much all week. Mm-hmm. And so I'm at work. If I see the show on, I'll pop in. I'll say hi to everybody real quick. And then I'm just working and listening. So I don't really comment that much. But in the certain times that I can look at my phone and kind of scroll through the chat a little bit, you get some really cool, well-informed people in your chat. So I just want to say, all of you guys, the fact that I get the privilege of talking to you guys tonight is really awesome. And I appreciate you guys having me because you got some really cool people in your chat, man. You know what I mean? I gotta throw some love out to you guys because like a lot of the stuff in just looking at the chat now, a lot of the stuff that I've seen also over other chats, everybody's just, dude, they come up with really good ideas and really good comments and really seem to have a handle on what's going on and kind of know how to read between the lines and look at other sides of an issue. And that is appreciated for someone like me. And I know for you too, Tony, 100%, you know what I mean? In eventually doing live shows of my own, it's nice to have people who know what they're talking about and just kind of take it all in. So I just wanted to throw that out, throw some love to the chat because you guys are pretty awesome in there. So
appreciate that. Let's see here. Okay, so I got two from the same person. Two questions. Okay. You can hit them separately, however you want to do it. What are your thoughts on astral projecting?
I think it's a very real thing. I do. I think there is astral projection, and I think there are people who are talented enough to do it. I am not one of those people who are talented enough to do it. But I can, as an example, in short, ever since we started doing this stuff, since earlier in the year, I've kind of had going through this weird consciousness, spiritual journey of my own, where I'm looking at things completely different. And it's attracted me to listening to certain people who I would not normally listen to. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's just kind of like, it's boring, and kind of just scroll through or find something else to listen to or watch. I've come to a better understanding of things like consciousness, astral projection, dreams, all of that stuff. And that's the whole spectrum of the thing, whether it be in the cryptid subject, the UFO subject, paranormal, ghosts and the great beyond, spirits. I do think it's a very real thing. I have not experienced that myself, but I'm not seeing as time and consciousness and spirituality as a linear thing anymore. I think it all just kind of, if you like wrap your fingers together type of thing, I think it all weaves into itself type of thing. I hope that kind of answers that anyway.
Yeah. And the other question that they had was, do you know anything about the Hat Man? Or do you have any stories or heard any stories?
I have not personally seen the Hat Man, and I think I've only heard a couple of stories from around my area about the Hat Man. I've heard quite a few stories from just listening to different podcasts and different channels telling stories or people talking about the Hat Man. It's a very weird phenomenon to me. It's kind of like a Black Eyed Kids thing almost. I know they're not the same, but I kind of classify that together as a really weird thing. You know what I mean? I wish I had more to go on. I'm thinking I'm going to start traveling into looking into that subject because it's very interesting why so many people from around the world, not just here, but from around the world, are seeing this entity. Personally,
yeah, weird.
If I had to make an assumption or a quick judgment based on that, by what I know, I think it's a manifestation of certain things from different people at certain times, and they're seeing this type of thing. Maybe it's kind of almost like the Point Pleasant Mothman. Maybe it's from a lot of the stories I've heard, people will see the Hat Man and then something will happen. It's almost kind of like a harbinger of some kind. That's not all of them, but in a number of them. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure it does. And let's see here. Mr. B's got a topic that this is pretty broad, but we're gonna let it rip anyways. Cryptids in Maine. What are some things, cryptids, that you've heard or people have told you about or that you've read up on in Maine?
Or what I've seen other than Bigfoot?
Yeah, other than.
Okay, I've got a couple stories for you if you want to hear them.
Yeah, let's let it rip.
They're short. I'm sure you're familiar with the pale crawlers, which is commonly referred to as the rake.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of those.
Those are real. 100% real. My cousin Wade, and they're short. Both of them are short, but my cousin Wade lived out in Alfred. So where I live right now, I kind of live in the middle of Sanford. Like I can take Route 202 and go right up to the middle of town, right over here. It's like I can walk up there in like 10 minutes. It's literally down a couple of roads from me, like right in the middle of town, the big park or the main intersection, couple of main intersections. If I take a couple of back roads, and I get onto Pleasant Street in Springvale, and like I said, anybody from my area will know where I'm going. Where my youngest goes to school, right down the road from that, probably a couple of 100 yards, is a turnoff called Railroad Ave. And that goes into Alfred. And that'll take you down Jabung Woods Road and over to the Gore Road. And so his old house where he used to live is probably about 15, 20 minutes from me. And if I'm puttering along. I drive a police interceptor, so I don't really putter anywhere, unfortunately. It's hard to stay out of the gas pedal with that thing. But anyway, I'd spent a lot of time in the weekends, like sleeping over his house. My cousin Wade and I were pretty close. Out of all of us cousins, kids in the family, him and I were the closest. And so his bedroom faced the woods. Basically, it was this weird house that was built into the side of like a hill. Almost. It was weird. Just strange. It's like his house was built into the ground. But anyway, in his room, he had a skylight up on the roof. Now, on the back side of his house, the way that the house was built, the ground was raised right there, kind of in a hill. So you could literally walk around the back of the house and step up onto the roof of that house, that ranch, like it was a normal step. So he had skylights in every room. My aunt and uncle had skylights in every room. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I remember him telling me the story of the pale man, or the white man, as he called it, the skinny man. He said it a few different ways. And I didn't think much of it. I'm like, okay, my cousin's having nightmares. I've had those before, where he said he'd be laying in bed at night and the skylight's right above his bed. And on nights where the moon was really bright, full moons or almost full moons with the moon's really bright, throwing a lot of moonlight out, he would see this like white, scary looking thing with sharp teeth and black eyes and all that stuff and looking down at him. It would scare the hell out of him. He'd just kind of pull the covers up over his head and roll over up against the wall. And he said there's been nights where he's got one window that faces the backyard, and probably from his window to the tree line's probably about maybe 20, 30 yards type of thing, 50 yards maybe. And he says he's seen this thing walking in the woods and all that. Well, anyway, to get into it, I'm sleeping. We go to bed. I'm on the floor in a dude, I just had a brain cramp, sleeping bag. And I just wake up. It was like 1 a.m. I remember it being like around 1 a.m. because he had a clock on his nightstand, and I woke up and it's the first thing I saw was that like glow in the dark clock right there. And I'm like, and I look, and Wade is on his knees up on his desk in front of this window, because the window was kind of set high up a little bit. And look over, I look up and I'm like, hey. And he turns around and looks at me, and he does like the shush sign with his finger to his mouth, and he kind of waves me over. So I go over there and I crawl my little chubby butt up onto the desk, and I'm looking out the window, and in the tree line directly from the window, there is this really thin, pale crawler. It's the best way I can. It had its mouth open slightly, so you could see a little bit of teeth, and it had big black eyes and these like 2 holes. So it's basically like what you've seen in trail cam footage, kind of like that, only scarier because it was right in front of us. And it's got its hands wrapped around the tree, a big tree, and it's kind of peeking from one side, and it kind of goes and peeks in the other side, and it sniffs the air, and then it just kind of goes off into the woods.
No,
And
man, that's crazy.
that
Golly.
Yeah, well, it gets better because I don't know if it was the same entity, but 10 years later, I'm 22 years old. At the time, I'm with my ex, which is my oldest son's mother. And I had made friends with the guy. See, my grandfather in 95, my grandfather passed away. And my aunt and uncle and grandmother kept that house for a few more years. But my aunt and uncle were able to get a house down in the south end of town, and they took my grandmother with them because they had like an in-law apartment above the garage. So they sold this to a guy named Elmer, who was, he went to school with my grandmother. So you're looking at the age there, 50s, 60s type of thing at the time. And his son, John, lived in Georgia with his ex-wife, and when Elmer bought this house, John came up here to live with him. So John and I became good friends because, just to say this real quick, one night I go to hang out with him, and we're smoking a cigarette out on the long porch there, and he turns around and looks at me and goes, "So when were you going to tell me about him?" And I'm like, "Harvey?" He's like, "Oh, you named him." So he met the spirit but that's another story for another time anyway. I was telling him about different experiences I had and all this stuff one night, because we had this thing. We would, few nights a week, I would go over and grab him after I got out of work, and we would go to the House of Pizza, have pizza or a steak bomb or whatever. So we're telling stories, we're exchanging stories. His from Georgia, mine from here. And I told him that story I just told you about the crawler, and he's like, "Really?" He goes, "Where is this place?" I'm like, "Actually, it's not very far away." And he's like, well, let's go down there. So I'm not going to just take this guy to my cousin's house, because my cousin Wade, I'm trying to think if they still had the house, but I just wasn't going to show up and, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Random 50-year-old man just hanging out.
Well, yeah. Well, John was my age at the time, so
okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we were the same age, but still, just to, because he's the type of person. He was Wiccan and told me about all the stuff that him and his friends did down in Georgia, and I'm just like, I'm not gonna show up. Because my uncle Mark, being former Marine Recon Special Forces and state trooper, I'm not gonna bring this kind of kooky dude to their house and be like, "So, where did you see the monster?" I'm like, my Uncle Mark could grab him and be like, you get the fuck out of here. Oh, sorry. He goes, you get the heck out of here, man. You know what I mean? He was a no nonsense kind of guy. But anyway, I'm like, well, I knew of a trail. That trail that I took him on is not there anymore because now there's a whole lot more houses down that road than there was before. But I kind of took him to the Alfred end of Jabung Woods Road. And there was a big, we called it a car trail. It's just a big wide trail. I don't know if you could drive a car down if you wanted to, or a pickup truck or something like that. And we're walking down this trail and we probably got about maybe in between half to a quarter of the way down the road because the trail ran parallel behind all the houses that were there at the time down the road. And we decided it was going to be dark soon. It was fall. It was like around this time. And I was like, well, let's get out of here. We'll just go back to the car. We'll go for a burn cruise and then hit the house of pizza. And we did that anyway. But still, the short of it was we're walking back. There's leaves on the ground. As we're both started crying. Oh no. And I was looked at the chat. I'm sorry. My bad. And turn the chat off real quick. It's too easy to.
You're fine.
Yeah, I know. So I'm dragging this out. I'm sorry, everybody. So anyway, as we're walking back, we're testing this theory. We're walking and we stop and we hear a couple steps behind us. It wasn't heavy. It just kind of sounded like a person behind us. So we got to almost the end of the road and there weren't really any houses down there. The only thing that was down there was like an auto garage across the street that was, we weren't totally out of the woods yet at this point. And I stopped and I'm like, what the hell is behind us? So the three of us stop and John, he's like, dude, I don't know that I like this. I don't like this. I'm like, why not? I'm like, what's the matter? I'm like, I just had this feeling. He's like, I think there's something behind that big tree right there. It was really close to me. Like I could take probably 10 or 15 steps and I could touch the tree. So I started taking a couple steps forward and I stopped because an arm came around the damn tree.
Oh,
it was
goodness.
This white, sickly, pale, thin arm, like no body fat at all, just like muscle and sinew. And this hand wraps around the tree and just kind of puts it around the front of the tree, and it had like claws on it. And that kind of freaked me out. I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, all right. I've seen that thing before. I started kind of backing up until it popped its head around the side. And then I pulled and I shot at it because dude, ever since I turned 18, my 18th birthday, my grandfather gave me a 45 as a birthday present. It was his. It was a Colt 911. And I carried that thing with me everywhere. You weren't allowed to at that time. So that's why I always concealed carry. And I got stupid and I got scared. And I knew my brain said, you have the means to take care of that problem. So I pulled and I started firing. And I'm going to let you know something. When people say these things are fast, they are really fast. I was a good shot. I was even leading my target and I didn't hit this thing. All 8 shots. Bah, 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 bah. I'm just seeing dirt fly. I'm not even coming close to hitting this thing when I have it in my sights. So, and I got the full Monty on this thing after, and it's kind of disturbing to tell you the truth. Really, just this sickly thin, sinewy, just humanoid is the best word for it. I know it's the word that's used, but it looked human, kind of. If you had somebody who had been dealing with anorexia all their life, not trying to say anything bad like that, but and the way that it moved on all fours was just like when you see those videos of like the German Shepherds or the Belgian Malinois, how they're like just right out doing like 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour running. It was like that. So if you could picture a human with that kind of body shape running on all fours, which is completely unnatural looking, but looking so natural, it was literally a complete conundrum in my mind. Probably one of the reasons why I missed the friggin' thing, and I got scared. I ran. I emptied the magazine. I ran away, like bolted. I'm like, "Oh, run!" type of thing. So, yeah,
Man, that's man. Wow.
That was incredibly stupid of me because there were houses and I know people heard it. And I was at that point when I started running, I was scared of the cops coming. You know what I mean? Because you weren't supposed to carry. You had to have a concealed weapons permit, go through hours of classes, that type of thing until in 2015, the governor at the time made it a constitutional carry state. We don't need to do that anymore. But still, that was really stupid of me to do that. But damn, dude, I'm not going to lie. I was terrified. That scared the hell out of me.
No, I'd
So,
light it up too, man. Golly. But there's another. I guess there's another topic. I guess that I think involves what you're talking about. There's a triangle up there, right, up in Maine.
yeah,
that everyone talks about.
Yeah, it's weird. I only really found out about this triangle a couple of years ago. The Aroostook Triangle. There is in like Massachusetts is the Bridgewater Triangle, but apparently we have one here in Maine, the Aroostook Triangle at the top of the state, close to the border of Canada. And that's where Aroostook County is. And it's weird. Like, it's kind of like one of those things where it's like a mishmash of paranormal, cryptid, and UFO sightings, kind of just like Bridgewater Triangle or the other ones that are kind of around there. Now, I haven't heard of any like plane crashes, like a Bermuda Triangle type of situation. I haven't heard of anything that, but when I started looking into it and talking to the guy who says he named it, there's been a lot of strange stories coming out of there. I mean, as weird as it is, there's even been some like Dogman and Bigfoot stories, that kind of thing. So I in truth, I haven't heard a whole lot, like in detail, haven't heard a whole lot of stories. But as far as coming down a little south, I mean, there's the Wolves of Palmyra, that family that dealt with, apparently it was either a pack of dogmen or one dogman and some dire wolves, like giant four-legged wolves. You know what I mean? Kind of like almost like you would have seen in the Twilight movies or Game of Thrones type of thing. Giant wolves like that. One that stood upright, that type of thing, that kind of held these people hostage for a couple of days or a couple of nights, I should say.
Yeah. That was on, I believe that was on a, I can't remember what show that was.
It was on a show, and I don't quite remember exactly the show, but I did read, I think it was the blog Phantoms, or the website Phantoms and Monsters, I think, that did a detailed story on it. Was pretty decent.
And I think they used that for that episode, and I cannot for the life of me remember, but they hyped it up for like 2 months. They said this is a true story, and I think they had obviously it was a dramatization, but like they had I think it was like the mother or the father on there, and then the rest of the family were like, no, we don't want to talk about this. So that one of the family members was like the spokesperson in a type of documentary style slash. I can't remember the name of that show though. It was a big show for the time.
Was it Paranormal Witness?
Yes.
Yeah, because they've been to Maine quite a bit. They did a couple of places up here in Maine. Like they did a house in Shapley that's haunted AF, dude. I would love to get my hands on that house. I'm not exactly sure at this point how to get a hold of people to do that, but I have done a place in Shapley. This was a long time ago, but I had been to a place in Shapley that had a native burial ground in the backyard, like in the back of their property. That was a pretty weird place. The whole energy of that area is strange, man. I had actually talked to a lady that we both know that was a witch. That is, I don't know if she still is now, practices, but she was pretty active at the time. And I asked her how can I help these people? And she's like, well, if that's a native burial ground down there, they're unhappy about something. What do you know about them? I'm like, well, I know that they have a big ATV trail, that set of trails they made for their ATVs and four-wheelers and three-wheelers and dirt bikes to ride around in. And one portion of those trails goes right by those native mounds. And she's like, that's probably it. And when they moved that portion of the trail and started kind of rounded it out and took another route, the problems they were having in their house stopped.
Wow.
So like the missing things being moved, seeing shadows. You know what I mean? Little disembodied voices here and there, things like that. Things, all the common scary haunting type of things. When they moved that trail and moved away from the mounds, all that stuff stopped. And I was like, wow,
Man,
that worked out pretty well.
That's one thing about I always. Do you have me on in the background? I keep hearing myself talking.
I don't. It might be my. Let me turn down my headset a little bit. Can you still hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I just keep hearing myself. I think it's like a muffled noise. Do you hear that when I'm talking?
I don't know. I don't.
Maybe it's just me.
I don't know whose end it is. I know sometimes if I have my headset jacked up, it can tend to do that to the other side. Did that help a little bit?
Let me ask the chat. Since you guys are listening, I can't hear it. Maybe I'm just maybe it's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm losing my mind a little bit. But kind of getting back to what I was about to say. So when it comes to these different places where I don't know if it's like, I guess, burial mounds or cemeteries. What's crazy is there's a place in Eufaula, Oklahoma here, kind of central Oklahoma, and basically this guy built a house right on the edge of this known supernatural place that my family has, and they say it was funny. My uncle's like, man, I don't really see them much. I was like, yeah, they're probably out the house, But when people build things that they have no knowledge, they buy a piece of land and they say, and that's kind of I hate using the word colonizer type language about people because we're in 2024, we're in the 21st century. You can buy things now. You know what I'm saying? But when you buy land that you don't really know, you're from a different part of city, state, whatever. You don't know what you're buying until you get there. And that's a good example that you talk about is when you mess with things and you change things from what they're originally supposed to be, you're going to have issues,
Well, I mean, my thoughts on that is that at the time that was the case. You know what I mean? For us, our way of thinking is different than it was. There are some people who still hold on to the past. It is what it is. That's okay. However you think is how you think, whether somebody agrees with it or not. But the spirits that are there, they're still kind of in that mind frame. That's kind of my take on it. So they're going to have that vibe about them. Be like, oh, no, this ain't your land. And I'm going to show you. Because they're not, you know what I mean? When they moved into the spirit world or passed away, from the physical world, they still had that mind frame about them. And there's still probably some rather deep-seated animosity and hate going on there. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think in that situation, I can't, what's the best way to put it? I can't think poorly about it, that kind of situation because, that was just the mind frame at the time. Now, like somebody I saw in the chat did say, show goodwill to the spirits. I mean, I think that can definitely help, them moving that dirt bike trail definitely was showing goodwill. So it's not disturbing that burial area anymore. And that's why all the stuff in their house stopped. I mean, that's kind of how I took it. You know what I mean? Also told them go burn some tobacco, leave offerings, you know what I mean? That type of thing. And the girl that I worked with at the time that told me this, and I told her to do that in moving the trail and showing an offering of good faith, all that stuff just straight stopped. So, I mean, I think there are ways that you can appease the spirits that are there and be like, listen, I'm not doing this to be a jerk, but this is my time and my land. But I'm going to show you that I care about how you feel type of thing. You know what I mean? So it's that I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing to be like, hey, listen, sorry, dude, but hey, we can coexist here. At least that's how I'd like to think it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And that's one thing that's kind of crazy about specifically, entities and places that, we have no idea what's going on. Is there any other stories that you have from your time investigating? That you were that really scared you.
Well, we can talk about the wreck. That was the most recent scary thing.
Let her rip.
Well, I don't know how many folks here, like 4 or 5 days ago, I think it was Friday, I think it was, or Thursday, I put out the first trailer for Echoes. And at the end of that, I have clips of different places that we've gone, that just little clips here and there. Well, the last one, we were at a place called the Springvale Wreck. And basically, it's a swimming area / play area / camping, not camping, I'm sorry, but picnic area in Springvale, not far away from me, where it's like a wide area of the Mousom River where people can go in. There's a little beach there. You can go in and swim. They usually have it buoyed off during swimming season. And there's also a trail that leads off of the beach in that area that goes to another area. Now, I did not name this, but it's called Indian's Last Leap. I'd never really known where the story came from, and I never ever thought that it was actually had like a native presence to it. And I was wrong on that one. Because there's an area at the leap where it's like a rock formation, but there's a pool at the bottom. So it's probably like a 20-foot drop. So you can jump off the rock and land in the middle of the little pool there, and you're safe. You know what I mean? There's a safe spot to jump in and swim and all that stuff. And a lot of people like to go there too, but there's also been a lot of accidents and a lot of drownings, more at the beach area than the leap itself, but there have been accidents there too. And the wreck happens to sit in between two cemeteries. One's a really big cemetery just across the river called Riverside, and another one is much smaller one, but it's like a veterans cemetery. And it's older. It's much older than Riverside does have its old parts, but it seems like this veteran cemetery seems like it might be a little bit older in some ways. And so, dude, this was my son and I, we had this. Okay, I'm getting jumbled here. To start, there was a tragedy in June of this year where 2 teenage boys drowned at the beach area at the wreck. And a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old boy. They were from Jamaica. And from what I understand and what articles I have read about this, they were very strong swimmers because they would swim, in their home country. They'd always be in the ocean. I'm just going off of what I read for articles. And they were also strong swimmers. They were always in the water. They like to go to the wreck. It's a nice area to hang out. And one night they were there by themselves, night swimming. I mean, I've got 2 16-year-olds, and I know that how it goes when you get to be that age, or if you have kids that age, they want to be independent. I always try to be around them as much as humanly possible, but I can't be a helicopter parent as much as I'd like to be. But these two kids were swimming. These 2 boys were swimming down there by themselves. And I'm not throwing shade on the parents, but if it were me, even though I know I can trust my sons 100%, I'm going to be there with them just in case something happens because I'm completely paranoid. And they drowned in an area where probably came up to just above my belly. You know what I mean? So, and they were found, from what I understand, they were found at the the river bottom, holding each other. Now, it's a terrible tragedy, but that story just doesn't make any sense to me at all. You know what I mean? Considering all the factors, being strong swimmers, always being in the water, and then they were found in a height of water that you could easily stand up.
Oh, wow.
And not, you know what I mean? And it was just like, I don't understand that, dude. I don't get that. I mean, I'd heard of drownings there before. I'd even heard little blips of people talking about, having strange encounters down there. sometimes things grabbing your ankle when there was nobody around, when you're by yourself down there or with another person who wasn't trying to grab your ankle. You know, that was part of the reason why I wanted to go down there, as well as the tragedy that happened. I don't want to like kind of be one of those people that cashes in on tragedy, but if there was an energy that was still there, I kind of wanted to see what it had to say. I was interested because the story just didn't make any sense to me. And maybe I was reading it wrong, but I went down there with my oldest son, and we primarily stayed on the beach that night. And we got a lot of stuff from the spirit box. That was a very interesting session, truthfully. And we had a couple, like, I thought we were talking to the boys. I thought maybe their energy was still there and they were talking to us, but we actually got somebody else down there who had drowned a number of years ago, that their spirit was still down there, or their energy was. And when I told my friend that lived across the street, when I was telling him about that, some of the things the spirit box was saying, he kind of got pale and looked at me like I had three heads. And he's like, dude, that sounds just like a friend of mine that drowned down there one night while he was drinking.
Dang.
I was like, oh, okay. Well, we were probably down on the beach for about 40 minutes. And I looked at my oldest boy, because he was already starting to get freaked out. I'm like, you want to go, right? I'm like, I kind of want to hit that trail that goes to the leap. I mean, because it's not a long trail, but it's a decent walk through the woods. And I kind of wanted to hit the trail a little bit. I wasn't expecting to go all the way down there. I just wanted to go down there maybe a quarter to a half the way type of deal, just to see what we could get from the spirit box. You know what I mean? If there was anything that could be said, or if we heard anything. And we went walking down that way, and we probably got about maybe a quarter of the way down the trail. And he's like, do you hear that? And I'm like, hear what? He's like, just be quiet and listen. And it was dead silence. There was no cicadas or crickets, because those are really loud down there at certain points. And dude, I kid you not. And I know how cliche this sound. I even said it and my camera picked me up. It didn't pick up the sound, but it picked me up going, well, that's cliche AF and scary at the same time. Was we could hear like boom, 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 like this really distant, far off drumming. I'm like, come on, really? I'm like, that's got to be an urban legend, man. I never personally believed the tale about a story from the King Philip's War about a settler and a brave fighting each other, and the brave runs and jumps off the thing and he dies down there, and the settler does too. And I didn't believe that, because I thought it was an urban legend. And I'm like, okay. So we left, because it freaked both of us out a little bit. We didn't run away, but we took off. And I asked a couple people, I'm like, what do you know about the leap? And I'm like, I kind of thought that was urban legend. And a lot of people said to me, no, man, I think that's true. There's a weird energy down there. I'm like, oh, yeah, I felt it, but I didn't think it was that kind of weird energy. So a couple weeks later, myself, Jason, and Sandy go down to the wreck. Dude, this was one of the weirdest nights. I can only tell you the story, honestly. I just don't. It's just so strange. I didn't understand. But anyway, we go down there, turn on the spirit box, get the camera going. We've got the digital recorder going. Because I've got one of those little Philips, EVP digital recorders, and or 4 EVPs. And we had all that running, and we go walking across the field. And there, we just said, well, okay, we're going to hit the beach. Then I want to walk all the way down the trail to the leap. So we start to go to the beach. Now, if you see the beach, there's a set of stairs. There's a building, but there's like a play area, a set of picnic tables. In between them, there's like a footpath that's been paved. You walk down that, and there's like this big building. It's like the bathrooms. And then you've got a set of stairs that goes down, wooden stairs that goes down to the beach. And off to the side of the beach, to the right, is another building, which I think is like a storage building. And there's a big wooden deck that's right there off of that building. That's like literally like when I go down there to let the kids swim, I sit on that deck. So we go walking down the deck, and my buddy Jay goes, oh crap. It's not the word he used, but we turn around and we look, and there is two people on that deck, and they're if you know what I mean, right there under the
Dang,
light.
they was getting busy, huh?
Yeah, going yes, that, and we both walked away giggling like school kids. Just honestly, it was the funniest friggin' thing. And I'm like, well, I guess there's no beach tonight. Let's go hit the. And they didn't even notice us. Like, we weren't quiet. They didn't look up. Nobody noticed us. They were in a world of their own, bro. So we go down the footpath the other way and go walking into the trailhead. That's when everything just got straight quiet. Now, this part I'm telling you of the story is refined because I only had bits and pieces until the following Saturday night. Jay and Sandy and I were hanging out at their house, and we were just having a night hanging out as old friends because we've all known each other forever. And we all put our stories together and got this one story. Now, I don't know how it is in other parts of the country, but in Maine, birds don't chirp at night. We've got crickets and we've got cicadas. We also have fisher cats that sound like crying loud babies, the way they yowl. We've got foxes that make that fox yell, but we don't have anything like birds. Birds are quiet at night around here. They don't chirp. And that's exactly what it sounded like. We got probably 50 feet into the trail. It probably wasn't even that much. We probably got about 10 to 20 feet into the trailhead. And on the left side of the trail, there's another trail that runs for a very short, amount of feet that runs above this trail. So it's like you've got the main trail, and then if you turn to your left and look up, it kind of goes up into a slope about 20, 30 feet away from you. And there's another trail up there. And a lot of people like to go up there and kind of like hang out and have some drinks or whatever, you know what I mean? Kind of party a little bit up there. So they're not going all the way down, but they've got some good cover up there. And as we're walking in, crickets and cicadas go completely silent. There's no other woodland sounds, but I'm hearing this like scraping or crackling type of noise. And it sounds like it's coming from all around us. Like I'm looking around and I'm not seeing what it is. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm not, I've got I got a big spotlight. We had a couple of big spotlights with 1,000 lumen light flashlights. And I'm looking around and I'm not seeing it. And I realized that I think it's coming from above us. Cause like the sound wasn't to the left. It was like literally all around us in a circle. And I hear whistling and a chirping. It sounded like a bird chirp, but a faint whistle. And I thought the whistling was coming from the spirit box. And my buddy Jay stops, and there's this like log branch. It's not too big, but it's kind of big on the side of the trail. And he steps over to the trail and he's looking up that slope that I was just telling you about to the trail up above. And it sounds like the sound is moving, kind of like the way I was. Jay was to my left. So the it kind of sounded like it was moving that way. And that's when, like you see in the trailer, you hear respect. And then it says, get away, get away, get away 3 times. And that's when he says something's coming. Unfortunately, this was right before I got an external mic for that Rebel camera and an extra light for it, that it was like a crash. I wish I were like something coming down out of the treetops, hitting branches on the way down. I really wish I had my camera up, because I had both my spotlight and the other spotlight I have that his girlfriend was using was up on that slope. And when he said something's coming, that crash happens. And there was something big that was coming out of the tree. We saw it for a split second before we started running, because it sounded like a bluff charge to me. Because you can go up on, there was a video that I took that I didn't send you. I'm going to have to send it. I'm going to put it in that episode of Echoes when that comes to it. That you can go up on that trail and I could stomp my foot with my boot and you would get this resonation of a boom, boom sound. Only it wasn't as loud as what we heard. It sounded like a boom, 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 boom. 4 booms. I thought it was a bluff charge. But from what Jay and Sandy had heard, it sounded like something came down, boom, 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 all fours. If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really wish the sound would have picked that up and I thought it did, because it was really loud. Like, we heard it plain as day. The crashing and the boom, boom, boom. I mean, I've listened to it on my laptop, and I thought I could hear it. I couldn't tell. I haven't found the part where I don't have quite the software where I can isolate and enhance a certain like like audio track. I'm kind of looking for a free software for that right now, but so we ran, and that's the part you saw. So I cut it off there and did, the rest of it. But we ended up running up into the picnic area out of the woods, and we're stopping, and I'm like, "Are you effing with us? Did we just see that?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't know what the hell that was. All I saw was that flash that you guys saw." And the spirit box goes, "Safe." I'm like, "Well, thank you. I appreciate that." And I turned it off after that because I was kind of disgusted. But you know what I mean?
Man, that's
So
that's crazy, man. I'm glad you caught that though on video, especially like before you heard the crashing.
yeah, so there's a little more to the story if you want to hear it.
Yeah, let it rip.
Now, I know the background that you come from. So this was the part I told you before we started the show, that I can throw something at you, maybe something sounds like to you. So we did go back there. There was that was a weird night. We saw that on the beach, and the air was electric and weird feeling. I wasn't carrying. I forgot to put my sidearm on. I always carry whenever I leave this house, especially when I go on these hunts at night in the woods or graveyards or whatever. It's not for, dude, I'm not Sam and Dean, so I don't have ghost bullets or I don't have salt bullets. I mean, that's just for any crazy people or animals that come out, or anything solid that wants to do me harm, type of thing. I kind of have that backup. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the next time we went back a couple of weeks later, we had two other people that Jay and Sandy work with joined us. So myself and one other person that showed up, we were both carrying. We were armed. So it was kind of a completely different situation. That was the first, I just gotten the Spirit Talker, Spirit Box app. And one of the people that was with us, a girl that was with us, one of the ladies, which is cool because it was one of the ladies that was carrying, but she was like, "What are you using for a Spirit Box app?" I'm like, "I'm using Spirit Talker. It's like $5." She's like, "Hold on." So she downloaded that right then and there on the spot. So we went out there and we walked all the way down the trail to the side of the leap, in behind it, back around and out. We probably only spent about 20 minutes. We were down there for a couple hours, and we went back to the beach that night, and we probably were only there for 20 minutes until we left. So I've got a lot of footage of going up and down the trail and all of those readings and everything. I haven't actually watched or listened to that audio. It's in my laptop, but from about halfway down the trail, we were hearing the chirping and the whistling. It sounded like it was it was a few feet into the woods. It was a little bit from us, but it was close enough to where we could hear those sounds again, and we could hear something walking in the woods, or some scraping and popping similar to those sounds that we had heard that night we got chased out. And it was with us from halfway down the trail, all the way down in and behind, and all the way out to the beach. There was a point where I haven't had the chance to really look at it or listen to it, but there was a point where it got loud, like it was close to us. And we actually referred to it like, "Yeah, that's those sounds right out there. It's been following us the whole time down here." And it was close. So I'm hoping that with that external mic, because it's a shotgun style mic, so I turned it because it's going to pick up sound the best when it's facing something. So I turned the camera and kind of put a flashlight up and threw it out there. So I'm hoping I got some of that audio, which would have been cool if I did. But so I asked Roth, you know who Roth is. He was in some of the chats that, we've been in and all that stuff. He does frequent Truth and Bass's lives.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that night. And if there's anybody who doesn't know who Rothian Fairmoon is, he's a younger fellow, but he's a remote viewer that remote views the spirit world. If that makes any sense to anybody out there. I know, Tony, it might to you. And I mean, this dude's helped me out with Haunted Sanford. He's helped me out with a few things. And to me, he's legit. So what he did was he remote viewed the area. And after a little bit, he came back with something that was like, I don't really know what I was looking at. He goes, because it's weird looking to me. And the way he described it, that it was big, it was in the trees. It was making those noises because there were no growls or yells or anything like that. I originally thought maybe it was a squatch, like a small squatch, because they have been known to skirt down from the area where I had my encounter. They will skirt down through Alfred, Shapley, kind of down around the side of Springvale, because even though Springvale, one area of it, very small area, is metropolitan, like the main center, it's also a lot of heavily wooded area. So they would skirt around the side, go up Hanson's Ridge, cross 202, move down into like where Vaughan Woods is in North Berwick, because there's been a Bigfoot sightings down in that area as early as prints being found in 2017. So I kind of thought maybe we ran into one of those and it wanted to chase us off, but apparently that wasn't the case, because he said it was big. It had kind of patchy hair in some areas, but not a lot of it. And its face was strange, almost like it was wearing something. So I conferred with another person that I know that kind of has a feelings about that stuff, that, you know what I mean? That type of thing that's kind of spiritual like that. They didn't want their name mentioned, but they had said to me, that kind of sounds like a native guardian spirit. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, he goes, that's what it sounds like to me. He goes, I'd even be willing to go on a limb and say maybe a Wendigo. And I'm like, aren't Wendigos cannibalistic, hungry spirits that attack people on sight because they're always hungry? And I don't know if this sounds right to you, dude. All right. So I know you and I haven't really talked about this too much. So if it's not that, then, he's like, I'm guessing, I'm not 100% sure, but he said that sometimes a spirit like that can be used as a spirit to guard an area and not be like what you've heard in stories and fiction and all that. Is there, from what you've heard, any truth to something like that?
I've never heard of a Wendigo is not something that's, I would say it would be common here. That's kind of Canada, that type of area,
like northern Midwest area, like where I am, because it gets stupidly cold here in the wintertime.
Yeah, because you're by Canada and places like that. But what I would say is probably there's something there that is of value, and it really could be anything. I don't know. Bigfoot doesn't sound quite right, but I've also heard Bigfoot being like very old medicine or native magic is a
right.
It has been used to have protection. Like, basically, it's kind of like an illusion almost.
Right.
It's almost like it's I don't know how. It's not, the illusion is not a good word. It basically just mirrors what something that you could be scared of,
right?
Like a mirage, or and it may actually not even be there. It's just this medicine is trying to get you out of the area because there's something of value. And that could be it too. But I've also heard too from especially those mound tribes that have the mound, kind of upper Midwest, like Minnesota. I heard a story from a guy who said basically that they had used the dogman werewolf type creature to protect the valuables. because it had
Okay.
a lot of grave diggers out there. So like I said, I've never heard Wendigo. You know, that's kind of that's
Yeah, I
more
mean, I was
evil type.
yeah, because I was kind of like, well, I'm not gonna call BS on it because I didn't know. I mean, there's so many different sides of that lore and legend, and everything has to do with like the native tribes that were in this area. Even in your part of the world, and every other part of the country that has kind of like that supercharged type of area. So I went back and I confirmed with Roth, and I said, "Do you think it could have been a native guardian spirit type of thing?" And he's like, "It could be. This could be." He goes, "I haven't run into too many of those." He goes, "And in all honesty, when it comes down to it, I was getting a really nervous, scared feeling when I was remote viewing that area. So there's definitely something down there." So what I did is I decided to do a little bit of research. I had known about the King Philip's War, and in short, anybody who isn't from the area doesn't know that during the 16s and 1700s, because Maine became Sanford became a town in the late 1700s. It was called Phillipstown before the name was changed to Sanford. And in the 1600s and 1700s, there was something called the King Philip's War. And it was basically like a colonization kind of fight. It was the settlers versus the native tribes. Now, I thought it was only in one certain kind of area. And I thought it was like kind of around, the Biddeford Saco area was where the fighting was the most because of the Saco River and the curse on it. The chief of the tribe, a lot of different tribes came together to fight together. And from what I got into it, once I started getting into the history of it, they were fighting from Rhode Island to Upper Maine, like all through this entire area. There was fighting all through Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island, all through the New England area. They were fighting, and I was surprised at that. And there are also legends that a lot of the different tribal chiefs were employing the help of fae and native spirits, guardian spirits, to help them fight the settlers. And I'm not trying to be like David Icke dot connector here, but now that I know that there is this presence and energy in the area, I'm starting to wonder if we ran into one of these spirits. And what you said kind of rings true, because we weren't doing anything. I mean, like when all you guys, or hopefully all you guys, start checking out episodes of Echoes when we drop it, I try to be the most positive and courteous person to the spirits when I'm talking to them, because for me, as I've found in talking to other people who have this like really upbeat kind of energy about them, you're going to kind of create a bubble of energy. That's why I like to take other people with me, and I like to talk to the spirits and just talk, because that kind of brings in a conversational vibe. And from my experience, I'm creating a bubble of energy. And that way the spirits, it starts slow off at first, but when they start feeding off of this bubble of energy, not necessarily feeding off of me, but this energy I'm kind of trying to put out, then the answers and the conversation starts rolling. And for me personally, I could be wrong. Anybody could call BS if they want to, but it's something that throughout this whole time of filming, it's working. That's just my experience with that. And so when I conferred with Roth again, he's like, "Well, I can tell you," he goes, "you didn't do anything to upset whatever was out there. So there must have been something going on that caused whatever that was to be unhappy. You just happen to be at the right place at the wrong time." And now I'm thinking, oh, those two people down at the beach there, I could see how maybe a spirit, or like you said, medicine or whatever it was, would see that as disrespectful. We just
Yep.
happened to be in that spot where it was like, you're going to pay for that shit type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you guys were in the wrong place, wrong time. Basically, sounds like.
And I think with whatever this energy was that was following us and making the noises like it was, only not running it off, because when I went in there, I stated my intentions. When I started hearing, I said, whatever you are, whatever energy you are, whatever spirit you are, Fae even. I don't know what you are and who you are. We are not here to cause any disrespect. We're just here to talk with the spirits and the energy in the area. I promise you. I promise. You can read my intentions. And it didn't come after us. It didn't run us out, but it most definitely shadowed us through our entire trip down through and back again. So until we reached the beach and we didn't hear anything anymore. So,
Wow, man.
I think intentions do definitely, play a role in something like that.
Yeah. Wow, man. You have definitely knocked it out of the park tonight.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm just glad that you and everybody in the chat, and I hope you enjoyed the stories, and I really enjoyed talking to you guys. So I'm a Frenchman. I love to talk, so it helps.
Where can they find you, man?
All right. My YouTube channel is called Mysterious Nocturnum. Unfortunately, on the screen, it doesn't have my logo. It's just you know what I mean? This time StreamYard didn't ask for the picture or anything like that, but you'll see it, Mysterious Nocturnum. I'm also on TikTok where under the same name. And of course, if you know my real name, I'm on Facebook and Twitter, but I just troll on Twitter. I like to troll liberals. Sorry, everybody. It's just fun. But and they troll me too, which is fun too. So, but yeah, mostly at this point, YouTube and TikTok is where I'm putting out. I may try Instagram at some point. I don't know, but that's pretty much where I am. And right now I've got a lot of stories up, and hopefully by Halloween, if I can get my stuff together and learn this software and get everything together, maybe I'm shooting for Halloween to get the first episode of Echoes out, and kind of just go from there, I guess.
Man, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you, man, and I'll be putting stuff in the description and the bio on the audio part too as well to help you out.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm just happy to be here, dude. I listen to you a lot, and I'm thinking the other night, I'm like, I want my chance to come on and shoot the breeze with you for a little while. So I'm glad that you asked, and I'm glad you found time for me. So I really appreciate that.
I knew I needed somebody a little crazy for Sunday night, so I thought I'd hit you up.
It's spooky season, man, and it's Sunday night, and hey, you got an awesome audience, man. So I'm just happy I was able to talk at you for a little while.
Yeah, me too, man. Everybody, I appreciate everyone that continues to support the podcast. You guys can find me Warcry Pod on TikTok, and then my email. So if you got a story or want to send me a picture or whatever, real Warcry Pod @gmail.com. Yahola Tiger on Facebook. Please send me a message send me a message as you add me, and let me know where you heard me on. It can be different podcasts wherever. I appreciate everybody that has come over from different podcasts and have found me on TikTok and all these different places and sending me messages and telling me how much they like the episode. Wherever I was at. I appreciate that. I don't like to do other people's podcasts very much, but I do select. So Ryan, Chaos Man, you let me know. You say if you need somebody on one of your live streams later on, let me know. I'll be happy.
100%. And I just want to make a comment. I'm looking at the chat right now, and I see AAO. Buddy, you ain't got to send me a bill. It's all good. I'm totally free. You know what I mean? And I'll bug Tony to get me to come onto the show again if y'all need some therapy. I'm there. You know what I mean? Untrimmed Savage. You know what I mean? I think I'm seeing. You guys are awesome, dude. Totally. If you find my channel and you want to email me, just find. And I think the only description I don't have my email in is the newest one, the trailer for Echoes. But if you go to any other video under that, and if you could, dude, I'd love it if you guys checked out Haunted Sanford. Whether you like it or you don't, any criticism is good criticism as far as I'm concerned. So, but yeah, you can find my email in there. I'm a ding dong, and I misspelled my I was just gonna have @mysteriousnocturnum @gmail.com, but I misspelled it, so you'd have to actually look at the spelling of it to get me at my Gmail, because I was doing it quick and I wasn't paying attention. So, but yeah, so free therapy sessions, no worries, definitely. So, and
right, Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No. I was just saying, you know what I mean? And hey, listen, I mean, Tony's got a great show here, and I absolutely love it. So I'll be listening and shooting in there here and there to say hi to all you guys in the corresponding shows later on. So, but yeah, if you need, go ahead and email me. I'm free. No worries. So we all need a little therapy. This has actually been a therapy session for me, telling stories. So I think it works out for both of us. Definitely.
For sure. All right, guys. This is it. It's over. Y'all have a good night, and I'll catch you on the next one. Appreciate you,
Thanks,
man.
everyone.